So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the keynote at eCOTS. And I am happy to introduce our two speakers today. We have Dr. Patti Frazer, and she is a professor of mathematics and statistics at St. Lawrence University. And she has served on or chaired the ASA MAA Joint Committee on Statistics and Data Science Education, the Sigma on Statistics Education, and the AMS MAA ASA CM SAIM Joint Data Committee, among others. She's currently serving as co-chair of the College GAISE revision. She has won numerous teaching and presentation awards. She is passionate about finding more ways to help students succeed and enjoy introductory courses in mathematics and statistics. We also have with us Dr. Jamie Perrett, and he is a fellow of the ASA. He has received his PhD in statistics from Kansas State University in 2004. He has held several positions over the years in industry and academia. He is currently an associate teaching professor in the Department of Statistics at Brigham Young University, where his research focus is on statistics education. He is actively involved in the ASA, where he currently serves as the vice chair as the chapter of councils, co-chair of the College GAISE revision, and the ASA representative on the CBMS Data Science Task Force. So let's please welcome Patti and Jamie, and I'm very excited, and I'm sure you all are, to hear what they have to say. So welcome.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, so we're here Jamie and I are co-chairs of the College GAISE revision process, and we'll be bouncing back and forth. We're co-presenting this keynote, and we welcome you to the last day of this wonderful eCOTS conference. And so let's get started. For those of you that don't know, GAISE stands for Guidelines for Assessment and Instruction in Statistics Education. It's been the gold standard for almost 20 years now for teaching an excellent introductory statistics course. The original GAISE report was written in 2005. It was revised in 2016. And it's now being revised again, which is what we're talking to you about today. There are three reports that cover different areas in statistics education. There is a GAISE report for pre-K through 12, which is not what we're talking about. There's the college GAISE report, and there's curriculum guidelines for undergraduate programs in statistical sciences. That one came out in 2014, so it might be almost time for that to be revised, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about here, oops, and I did not mean to do that. I clicked on the link. Sorry about that. But that is what we're talking about today, is college GAISE. Okay, so if you Google GAISE or click on that link, apparently, you get to this page, which has the pre-K to 12 report here and the college report. And if you can see the bottom of your screen, you can click on that link to see the full report, which is in PDF form off of this site. So College GAISE 2005, Jamie and I want to mention right at the beginning that we stand on the shoulders of giants here. There have been some of the biggest names in statistics education have worked on these earlier reports, and we thank them. The 2005 6 recommendations are here, again, almost 20 years ago. But still incredibly appropriate. Emphasize statistical literacy, use real data, stress conceptual understanding, foster active learning, use technology, use assessments to improve and evaluate student learning. All still relevant and wonderful. The revision for 2016, also outstanding. They modified the recommendations, added multivariable thinking in particular, and added a whole lot more to the full report. The full report is a lot more than just the recommendations that many of us are familiar with. In fact, the PDF is 141 pages, and here is the table of contents. There are lots of wonderful, wonderful resources in there. So if you're not familiar with all the great activities, projects, data sets, assessment items, and so on in this report, I recommend it to you. But there's been lots going on in the area of statistics education in the last 8 years, I guess, since the 2016 one came out. So it was time to think about another revision. And this revision was organized by the American Statistical Association and the ASA section on statistics and data science education. It started a year ago, in fact, almost exactly a year ago, because Jamie and I spoke to many of you at eCOTS in Pennsylvania in June of 2023, and that was our first meeting, and you got us started with a bang with lots of great information that we gathered in that breakout that we held a year ago. Back then, and still, we expect the revision process to take about 2 years. So we're tentatively calling our new report College GAISE 2025. The steering committee is 8 people. Jamie and I are co-chairing it. It also includes Dave Hunter, Lisa Kay, Kate Kozak, Chris Malone, Maria Tackett, and Donna Lalonde. And it's such a great committee, and many of them are probably here and maybe can jump in as needed. This is what we want to share with you today. So we're going to start by unveiling the new College GAISE 2025 recommendations, with wonderful thanks for the feedback we've received from, again, probably many of you in the audience. It was enormously helpful. We're going to present a first draft of student learning outcomes for introductory statistics with a request from you for input. We're going to discuss the role of data science in the College GAISE 2025 report with another request for input. And we're going to ask you what else you think is particularly important to be in the final report with another request for input. So with that beginning, I will turn it over to Jamie.
Thanks, Patti. So like she said, we have finalized the recommendations for the College GAISE revision, and we have 10 recommendations, and we look forward to sharing those with you right now. So the first recommendation is to teach statistics and data science as iterative processes of gleaning insights from data to inform evidence-based decisions. So the focus is on it being a process rather than being a formula, turning data into information. The second one is emphasizing effective written and oral communication for results from data, with attention to the scope and limitation of conclusions. And so just very important, statistics don't do anything on their own. If we cannot communicate them effectively, then they're useless. Number 3, focus on conceptual understanding rather than algebraic manipulation and formulas. So again, we want, people can look up formulas if they need to. To some extent, software and applications process the formulas in the background. And so what students need to understand and internalize are the concepts. Number 4, integrate real data with context and purpose throughout the course. Select data that are meaningful and engaging to students. And so when you can use data that is meaningful, it engages students in the process, and they're more invested in what they're doing. And so one thing that I want to mention here, a reminder that these are recommendations. These are not requirements. And so There will be times where the recommendations are great for what you're doing. And some of you may be saying, well, I've got an example that I use in class that doesn't follow one of these guidelines, and that's okay too. These are recommendations that are to help guide your statistics education efforts. Number 5 is encouraging multivariable thinking. And when I first saw this from the previous version, I thought, multivariate statistics, that seems pretty advanced. And so clarification, this is not multivariate statistics. With multivariable thinking, the understanding is that data typically comes in tables that have more than just one column or two columns. So recognizing that we're trying to prepare students for their future careers, and when they see data, they're probably going to see data in large amounts, and perhaps all you're using for your particular example is one of those columns or two of those columns, but making sure that they see that that's not all that data is, we feel is very important. Number 6. Incorporate software and apps to explore concepts and work with data. So again, focusing on helping students be ready for the real world. We want students to be using software or applications as much as possible. Calculators have their place for minor calculations, but not for statistical analysis. And so we want students to be prepared to do statistical analysis, which is done using software and applications. Number 7. Emphasize responsible and ethical conduct in the collection and use of data and their analysis. So data ethics is a huge issue. Many of us remember in 2018 when we found out that Cambridge Analytica had been harvesting personal data from Facebook without consent. And there are many, many other issues of using personal data or using other sensitive data and making sure that we're not biasing conclusions based on the way that we're using the data or where the data came from. So these are big issues that students should be aware of. Number 8, employ evidence-based pedagogies that actively engage student in the learning process. So again, it's the active learning concept. I know, especially when I teach, the less I talk and the more that students are talking to each other as they work through problems, the more that they learn. So making sure that they're actively involved in the learning process. Number 9, use a variety of formative and summative assessments to improve teaching and learning. So in addition to using an assessment to see how well students understand the material, you can also use assessments as a way of helping them learn more. So assessments can be used to help you change what you're teaching. Assessments can be used on the fly as you're teaching to see if they understand what you're covering or if you need to cover it again or cover it more. And even assessments that allow students multiple attempts provides a learning process. So assessments shouldn't just be for determining if they understand the material. And number 10, implement a course design that uses inclusive strategies to foster a sense of belonging. So know your audience. If some of your teaching or assessment practices unfairly favor or hinder some of your students, find alternative approaches that may more fairly accommodate your students and their learning, because that's ultimately the goal, is that they are learning. Thank you. Here we have a mock-up of what GAISE might look like in the future. So as opposed to having a static PDF document, we want it to be interactive. And we recognize that having a website might be more useful because a lot of people hone in on the recommendations, but there's more to it than that, as Patti mentioned. And so if it's all there in front of you, it's going to be easier to access. So for example, you see up in the far left, top left-hand corner, it says has a list and it has recommendations. So you click on recommendations perhaps, and then it goes over to a list that shows all the 10 recommendations. And then maybe you click on one of those recommendations and it has a paragraph below it or other resources below it. And that's kind of the intent, is we want to make sure that we understand that the recommendations don't stand alone, that they have descriptions, details, examples, a lot of additional information, and we want that to be readily accessible. The other thing that you can see is on the far left, recommendations are intended to apply to introductory statistics and data science courses. But then below that, we will have a separation of intro stats versus intro data science. And with those, we want to include examples of assessments, examples that you can use in your classes, and other things that we'll talk about a little bit later. So the main point is we want GAISE to be web-based and interactive so that it's more useful for you.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. So we're moving into our student learning outcomes for introductory statistics. So the 10 recommendations are designed for instructors, and they're designed for statistics and data science. So we're breaking out statistics, as we will break out data science later also. We have 10 student learning outcomes for introductory statistics. Just a coincidence that that's the same number as the 10 recommendations. This is a draft, and so we're presenting this to you, and many of you will probably also get an email about this, as we did with the recommendations, to ask you to help us make them better with your input. So our goal with these learning outcomes is for them to be clear, both to instructors and students, to be comprehensive without being too restrictive, to be applicable to the wide variety of different types of intro stat courses that are out there, and to be useful to students and instructors. So here we go. Again, there's 10 of them. So after completing an introductory statistics course, a student will be able to identify cases and variables in a data set, including multivariable data sets. Recognize whether variables are categorical or quantitative. 2, assess how the data were collected and recognize how data collection affects what conclusions can be drawn from the data. Explain the importance of random sampling and random assignment and know the distinction between the two. 3, identify appropriate graphs and summary statistics for variables and relationships between variables, and correctly interpret information from graphs and summary statistics. 4, use software or apps to create visualizations, produce summary statistics, and carry out the computational aspects of statistical analysis, building on, of course, the recommendations that Jamie just shared with you. 5, explain the importance of random variation in statistical inference. Recognize that statistical inference involves generalizing from a sample to a population. 6, identify appropriate methods to use in statistical inference and interpret results from those methods. 7, understand that conclusions drawn from statistical inference might be wrong due to sampling variation. Recognize the problem of publication bias and the key importance of replication. 8, demonstrate effective use of predictive models, such as regression lines. 9, evaluate ethical issues in statistical practice. So again, lots of connections with the recommendations to instructors. 10, effectively communicate results obtained from data. Okay, so going back to our goal here, we want these to be clear. We want them to be comprehensive without being restrictive. We want them to be applicable to the variety of IntroStat courses out there. And we want them to be useful. And we have a website. These learning outcomes are available on a link on our website, with huge thanks to Donna Lalonde, who makes everything possible. Also on that website is a link asking for your feedback. We welcome your input. So I'm going to go there now. Let's see. I want to go to here. So here's the landing page that I mentioned earlier. Again, all you have to do is Google GAISE, and the top link will bring you directly to this site on the ASA website. I'm not sure how many of you are good sleuths and discovered that there was a new link on this website, but it's on the College GAISE website. It says right here, stay up to date on the ongoing College GAISE revision process. And if you click on that link, we have a very minimalist website so far, but we're going to build it out as we go. Here are the 10 recommendations that that Jamie just described to you. So they're right there in an easy place to see them all at once. If I go back and click on the student learning outcomes, here are the, I'll scroll down here. Here are the 10 that I just presented. So you can find them all easily. Not only that, but if you click here on please use this form to provide feedback, we will be very happy that you did so. That will take you to a place where these 10 draft student learning outcomes are, and you can help us to figure out what we missed, what we need to elaborate on, what we need to reword. Any advice that you have for us, we will be happy to receive. Going back to the College GAISE revision, there's some more things on here that we're going to keep talking about now in our PowerPoint. So let's go back here, and I'm going to pause there. So you'll have lots of opportunity to give us feedback, but we have time, I think. And so if there are questions or quick comments before we move on, specifically on the student learning outcomes, I'm going to give Tyler a chance to interrupt and let us know now.
Hello. We have one question in the chat, and the question is so Rosanna is at a small school and asks, do you think students should take both classes? They have 2 courses. I'm not quite minimize the number of courses they should offer. Do you think students should take both classes or one of them moving between? So essentially, I think the question is around 1 course in statistics or 2 courses in statistics in order to achieve these goals.
Or possibly 1 course in statistics and 1 course in data science. There's lots of possibilities here. The 10 student learning outcomes are designed for a 1 semester course in introductory statistics, but they're not prescriptive, right? So it's possible that there might be places where they're not able to get to all of that in 1 semester, and that's fine. There, as Jamie also said, they're recommendations for student learning outcomes for introductory statistics.
And we'll talk a little bit about your question a little bit more in a couple of slides.
So if that's all, Tyler, we'll move on.
Yeah, I think move on for now, and then as questions come in, we'll answer them in the next time. Thank you.
That sounds great. All right, switching back to Jamie.
All right, so we did separate out the data science component from the statistics component, and we'll look at a few items in respect to that. So we feel like, coming from the American Statistical Association, that we have pretty good ownership of the statistics side. But with the data science side, we all recognize that that involves computer science, it involves mathematics, it involves physics, it involves many other organizations, and we don't want to come off as the ASA saying, here's what data science is, and you should all follow what we say, because we recognize that it's not just about statistics, it's about a lot of other disciplines. And so that's kind of our starting point for separating these two out. So the topics that we have that we want to cover in the data science component. One is, what is data science? So there's a lot of input that could be provided as to what that means. And so we want to have some discussion about that, not necessarily saying it's one thing or another, but talking about the different things that are seen as part of data science. The next topic, there are different flavors of intro data science courses. As we've talked to a lot of different people, we've found that some universities, as the question was posted previously, some universities have one intro statistics class and no intro data science. Some have one intro data science and no intro statistics. Some have one intro stats and then an intro data science, and you have to take them in that order. Some have both intro stats and intro data science, and you can take them in either order, and you only have to take one or the other. So there are a lot of different approaches, and we don't want to prescribe what approach you should use. Rather, we would like to recognize all those different approaches and provide recommendations that might fit within each of those approaches. And so Michael Posner and April Kirby have been putting together a survey of what is out there that has people respond and say, here's what my university is doing for our intro stats or our intro data science. And so I'll ask him if he can, in the webinar chat, put a link to his survey if others would like to help fill that out. But we're heavily going to rely, for this portion of the GAISE revision, we're going to heavily rely on the information that they've gathered. And we're very grateful that they've done that work so that we don't have to. So the next one, core topics versus additional topics. We feel like there are going to be, from a statistics perspective, core topics that we'll be able to see, especially from Michael and April's survey results, that are pretty common to the majority of those intro data science courses. And so that's where we can step in and say, from a statistics perspective, we believe that an intro data science course should at least cover these core topics. But then there are a lot of additional topics that, again, from a statistics perspective, we could say, if you're doing first an intro stats and then an intro data science, then these additional topics might fit well. Or if you're just doing intro data science and not requiring an intro stats, then we think these additional topics should be added to that intro data science course. So we're going to look at it in that perspective of core topics and additional topics. Next one. So assessments. We want to include assessments not only for the statistics side, but also for the data science side. And then next. Examples of syllabi templates. And I think the last bullet is learning outcomes as well. So we want to provide, if you're putting together an intro data science course, we want to provide some syllabi that you might use as a template and learning outcomes that you might use as a template. And so again, this will come largely from the work that Michael and April are doing, so that we want to make sure that this is not the ASA's perspective on what should be in data science, but this is including what is coming from computer science departments and other departments as far as what data science looks like. And we plan to as well get feedback from those other disciplines to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes, that this is something that even those from the computer science program who have an intro data science course can say, yeah, this is a good place. We trust these recommendations, or these syllabi templates make sense. The learning outcomes seem reasonable. It's not going against anything that we would promote. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking with the data science side, which is very different from the statistics side. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you. And I'll just mention that on our new GAISE revision website, again, linked off the GAISE website for the ASA, there's a open-ended form where you can insert anything you want to let us know about data science in particular. So go to that website. Yeah, Jamie.
Let us know if the approach that we plan to take is something you support, or whether you would recommend some kind of a shift in a different direction.
Should we pause there? I think there's time, Jamie, to see if there's any specific questions about this.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Thanks, Tyler.
Yes, there are that have come in, a few that have come in. So the first one here is, can you envision a joint introduction to statistics and data science as a single course?
Like I said, I think there are a lot of different flavors of intro stats and intro data science, and sure, why not? I think that there's a lot of topics, so you're going to have to decide which ones to not include if it's just all going to be in one course. But definitely, the course that we teach for intro stats here at BYU, it largely it's data driven, uses modeling, uses an app. And so we've tried to include some data science in that intro statistics class, but we also have intro data science classes that include some statistics.
All right, so the next question, which is kind of about your last slide, but they all came in at once. So what might the use of software for intro stats look like in the high school classroom? Teaching these students R or obtaining licenses to other products sounds tough. We don't love graphing calculators, but it often feels like the best option.
So I think Patti should answer this one, because she has an app that's freely available. And I think that's a good approach. I think a lot of high schools now have Chromebooks, and the Chromebooks cost about the same as the calculators, or less than the calculators. So I think it's more in reach for students to have an application type approach, or even in my class, students use their phones. They pull up the applications on their phones. And so that's why we have listed both apps and software, because in some cases in the classroom, you're using apps from websites instead of using software.
And I'll just add, apps like StatKey are freely available to everyone. There's been some talk here at eCOTS also, for example, Hunter Gland's talk about the fact that students don't have a very good sense about even what data sets look like, what data frames look like. And so you don't necessarily have to use R or Python, for example, to get them started thinking about data. Excel or Google Sheets is another way to get them creating visualizations and thinking hard about what data sets look like and the types of questions you might be able to ask for. So I think there's a wide range here of different possibilities.
But I think the point is that the calculators are really limited in what they can do. And so trying to do statistical analysis on them we don't live in that world anymore. So it's just not necessary. And so taking advantage of computers or applications that can do complex analyses is a better approach.
Okay, I'm going to refocus on data science here. Are data science recommendations for only the statistical content of data science, a data science course, or are the recommendations for an entire data science course?
Yeah, the focus will be on the statistical content, because again, we don't feel like we are owners of all that is data science, and want to make sure that we focus on where our strength is. Is that right, Patti?
Yeah, I think that's fair, although the truth of the matter is we haven't written them yet. And so it isn't completely clear what the final version will look like. We're still in the kind of data gathering stage.
And the other thing I think I would mention is that there are other recommendations and other material written from other disciplines like computer science that would say what they believe should be in a data science course. And so GAISE may actually link to some of those documents as well and say, you know, here's what we have from a statistics perspective, here's what you might see from a computer science perspective.
We have plenty of questions, so just let me know when you all want to move on to.
We're almost done, so keep going. If they're data science related, we might as well do them now.
Sure. So this one, what interactions with CS and other disciplines have you already had about data science, and what have you learned from that? And then an attachment to that with AP Stat, have you worked with the College Board with this in the AP Stat exam?
Yeah, so for the first part, we're just getting started. And so we both have colleagues, well, all of our group, we have colleagues that are from the other disciplines, and we've been reaching out to them and getting their feedback. But we are probably looking to come up with a draft first and then go to them and say, what do you think? What do you recommend? But we do plan to work with them heavily as we go through this process.
And as for AP statistics, we have been paying attention and staying aware of what's going on with AP statistics, but we haven't explicitly communicated directly with them. Getting feedback from them on the intro stat learning objectives is a great idea.
Okay, so this next question's about universities. Have you seen any examples of universities not allowing students to earn credit for taking both an intro to data science and an intro to stat class because of overlap in topics?
Yes.
I would say there's a variety. There's all kinds of examples of both directions. So we have Chris Malone on our team, and he's at Winona State, and they have both an intro stats and an intro data science course. And like I said before, some have, you can take one prior to the next one. The second one builds on the first one, but then in other cases, obviously they need to reduce the number of courses required, and so they will say take one or the other. So there's just a lot of examples.
All right, maybe we'll move on, and then there will still be lots and lots of time at the end for questions and comments. Okay, so we'll also have a printable PDF document. I didn't put that out. So we've just kind of told you where we are in the process of revising the College GAISE report. And what we expect will be included at the end is the 10 recommendations. And as Jamie said, we hope to have a lot of information, additional information for each of those recommendations, with citations to the statistical education or broader education literature with examples, assessment items, and all of that for each of them. We also, when we finalize the student learning outcomes for introductory statistics, we plan to have under each one of those similar kinds of built out information so that you can click on one of the recommendations or learning outcomes and get a whole lot of information about what we're thinking about when we write that, and what the literature says is valuable, why that might be valuable. We also plan to have sections on data science. Again, there's a link on our wonderful new website to give us more feedback on data science as you wish, whatever you think would be helpful for us. And also, the report is going to be more than this. So here's another look at what's included in the 2016 College GAISE. There it is here on the right. And so we hope to continue to have a whole lot more about what we're thinking about with multivariable thinking, activities, projects, and data sets, all of these things, examples of using technology. They might not be appendices, they might be chapters, they might be integrated into what we have for the different recommendations. But I guess we also want to hear from you. So over here on the left, what else? What do you want more of? What would be of biggest importance to you, most helpful to you? There is the last link on our new minimalist website is a link asking for you to tell us we'd like a lot more examples of assessment items, or we need project ideas, or whatever it is that you think would make the College GAISE 2025 particularly helpful to you. We really welcome your feedback on student learning outcomes, what we're thinking about with data science, and the broader report and things that are helpful there. This is our last slide, so I'm going to go ahead and go there. Thank you very much for joining us. There is a direct link to the College GAISE revision site and a QR code if that's more helpful to you. And Jamie and I'll leave this slide up for a little while for any of you that want to use it, but we're open to more questions and comments. And I see David Fluharty has raised his hand. Tyler, you want to?
Yes. I'm going to allow you to talk, David. Okay, no response. Let's go ahead and move on to
So I can
Go ahead.
answer. David put a question in the question and answer box. It says, do you have examples of how to approach multivariate thinking? Which tools? I'll just say from my personal experience, one of the things that we do at the beginning of the semester is we give students a questionnaire, 36 different questions that they all fill out. And I'm very fortunate that I have like over 2,000 students per semester, not me particularly, but with all of the different sections of intro stats. And so I have a lot of data to work with. So we start out with 36 variables and thousands of rows. And we use that for all of our examples throughout the semester. And so that's one way that we use multiple variables. And so again, the multivariate thinking is not necessarily multiple response variables, but just multiple variables in general, as opposed to just having for each example in the class, one little table that's printed out in the textbook that has 5 numbers that we're artificially analyzing.
And I'll just add to that we're not expecting all the intro stats classes to do multiple regression, for example. We're simply talking about doing visualizations, perhaps, that show 2, 3, 4 variables at once, even asking students what variables do you see in these data visualizations, and looking at spreadsheets that have multiple variables and lots of cases, and maybe even just having a conversation about how the variables might interact and the kinds of things you might be able to ask if you have information about the variables that are shown in whatever spreadsheet. Just really starting to get students thinking about the fact that that there's multiple variables out there. But we're also talking about when you're talking about survey data or something like that, anything really, talking about confounding variables. Simpson's paradox is an example of something that might fall under the encourage multivariable thinking. Really, even at the very beginning stages, getting students thinking about the fact that you might be looking at these 2 variables, but there might be other variables that are impacting what we're seeing from those 2 variables. So thinking broadly about confounding variables, I think, also fits into that one.
Okay, so the next question, changing gears a little bit, did generative AI impact your creation of the guidelines or learning outcomes?
They did not. Maybe that means we're, maybe they should have. They have not yet, although I suspect that we will need something in the final report that addresses that, right? It's pervasive already. It'll be even more pervasive in 2025. And so we have not actually run any of our materials through that. At least I haven't. I don't think anyone on the committee has. But perhaps we should. That's a great question.
There's a question here about, are you thinking of making a direct link from the learning outcomes to material and lesson plans in STEW, S-T-E-W, Statistics Education Web?
We have not, but we really haven't thought. Our next meeting is going to be about, all right, what and who are we going to need to get on board to help us kind of build out the recommendations in particular.
Yeah, so a great item of feedback might be, instead of asking if we've thought of that as a question, you might actually pose a potential solution and say, hey, what about using STEW in this way with the guidelines? And give us a suggestion or a recommendation that we can work with. That'd be awesome.
There's only one question in our question box right now about repeating the link to suggest what else would you like to see, if you can.
Yes, so right here goes directly to our minimalist College GAISE revision site. There's also a QR code, and I can bounce back over to this is what it looks like. And so again, here's the 10 recommendations. Let me scroll down. Here's the student learning outcomes. They're just in an easy, you can grab all 10 of them at once there. At the bottom of this student learning outcomes is the form, which we hope many of you will go to and help us make those better. Here is the form right here. It's just one question, give us any input you want to, open-ended form. To talk to us about what you think would be helpful with data science, what you think should be included, and what else would be helpful for you with the College GAISE report is this link right here. So they're all right on this page, which again is, I'll back out, is linked right here on the current 2016 College GAISE and Pre-K-12 report. And again, if you just Google GAISE, it is the first link. You'll get right to it. And our revision page is at the top, right under the name College Report on that site. So we're hoping it's easy to find. And keeping everything in one place as we have additional things, we'll post them there. But we're also going to send out a link to probably the ASA section, for example, to get feedback from people who aren't at eCOTS.
That was our last question. So thank you both for being here and giving us a keynote, giving us an update. And if everyone wants to put a round of applause in the chat, you can do that. So thank you both for coming, and I look forward to integrating some of these into my courses. Some of the newer ones I don't recognize.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and we look forward to your input.
Thank you all. Thank you for eCOTS.